Do you see the same quality movie from the 1990s winners to today's winners?
I mean, I think we are in a space where you look at some of the films. People always say this: would we have the same films made today that we did back in the 90s or the 80s? And I think that the answer to that is I don't think all of them would. I don't think that we would see some of those films made today. But I think right now is such an interesting time because you have a film in theaters right now that is very much of an 80s, 90 revival, and that is Top Gun Maverick again. And when you look at Top Gun Maverick, it's absolutely, the reason it's connecting is because it doesn't feel, nothing in the film feels forced. It feels like it is organic, and I think that is one thing that has to be part of your film no matter what you're doing. You have to make it feel like everything in the film is there for a reason and is not absolutely wedged in because it has to be, okay? And that there's many different definitions for what that is, but I think that when I watch Top Gun Maverick, I see a hearkening back to this, we're just gonna make a good film, and we're not gonna think so much about what has to be in or what doesn't have to be in. We're just gonna make the film that we wanna make. And I think that's a thing that studios have a challenge with. I think that a lot of studios have issues doing that. I think Paramount has really nailed the fact that they just make films that are very likable, and they look at what they've had this year. They've had Scream did very well for them. Jackass Forever, not a fan of the series, but still successful film. Lost City was good for them. Sonic 2. And even Clifford, the Big Red Dog movie was actually somehow entertaining. I couldn't believe it. But Paramount is doing the right thing right now, and now with Top Gun Maverick. Whoever's running that, the creatives there are in the right space, I think, for making a movie that appeals to a wide audience. And we need that. We need to have films that appeal to that huge part of the movie-going pie, because that in turn will flow down to some of these smaller films, because the studios have more people going to films, so they're going to have more money, they're going to spend more money on product, because obviously cinema is back, okay? So when we were back in 2020, we all know people were saying, are movies ever going to come back? Are people going to go to the movies? Do they feel safe? And there were a lot of people that said, I don't know if it's ever going to come back. I don't think this might be done. And I was like, no, this isn't done. I mean, theaters are cathedrals. There are, houses of worship for cinema. And for me, again, going back decades, it's a place that I go to just escape the world, right? And get locked in to a film for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And you are just there. You're lost. You're not thinking about anything else. And, sometimes studios will send me a screening link. Say, hey, do you want to watch this at home? I'm like, no, I don't. Because I get distracted. You put it on, and then you get a text. You get bored. You grab your phone. When you're at a theater, your full attention is there, right? You made the effort to come to the theater to watch this film, and there's something magical about that being locked in. That experience cannot be replicated at home. It's impossible because the distractions will enter in, and and also the communal aspect of it, right? The communal aspect of film, in ingesting a film, as it were, is really when you watch it with an audience, you say to yourself, you all experience these emotions at the same time, which again is so rare, as we talked about earlier, about that everyone's doing one thing, that we all grew up in the 80s where it was only this and this. Now we've got so many different options that we rarely have that opportunity to come together and experience one thing at one time. And that's the magic of movie going. And I think that's why it's not going away. And it's great to see it back, because it's back. I mean, you look at all these films that have done well over the last few months, starting obviously today with Top Gun Maverick, going back to Everything Everywhere All at Once, that's over 50 million domestic for a small independent film. That is back to 2019 levels. And I think that it's absolutely should be encouraging for everybody, because we need it. We need films, like Nicole Kidman says.
Well, forgive me, I have not seen Top Gun Maverick yet. No. But does it try to be an 80s film, or it does not? It lets itself be current. But
I think it does a great job. Top Gun Maverick does a really good job of being a little bit of both. Being an 80s film, late 80s, film and then into what we have today. Again, I think the magic of the film for me and how that film really works is that it is so spiritually connected to the original and has so much love for the predecessor that I was shocked when I watched the film that it was so connected organically to it without it feeling forced. And I think these days you see so many things that feel like, again, we're going to absolutely impart this in here, and it's whether we're just going to do it, and it might not serve the story, it might not be organic, grounded in the original. And Maverick finds a way to do that and to couple it to the original that makes it again. This is why everyone loves the film, because it really is able to do that. And I think people do respond to when things are grounded and they are organic versus they are forced. I mean, it's just that's what we know. We have that internal judge that goes that person is full of BS or that person is authentic. And I think the film feels authentic. And if your film doesn't feel authentic and it feels like parts of it have been or inorganically altered, as it were, then you're going to notice that, and it's not going to resonate with you as fully as it would is if it feels like it is all in service of the story and it works as a whole for the complete film and your movie-going experience.
When you left the theater, were other people just as excited about it?
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, when I came out of Matt, we saw press screening 2.5 weeks before it came out, and I've been to hundreds of press screenings, and you know when you have something special. You know when everybody's on the same page, when they come out and they're all like, oh my God, oh, did you? You know, everyone has the little conversation outside. What'd you think of the film? And I try not to say too much because one thing that's interesting when you come out of a film, I almost want to hold my reaction and not tell anybody because I don't want to be tainted by anyone else's opinion. So I try to stay away from what other people say until I have a chance to see it, because we all will be. If you listen to enough people who say this movie is the best movie ever made, and then you go into it thinking that, then of course your expectations are high. And then the film ends up being a little under the best movie ever made, and then you've been affected by the words that you've heard. But Top Gun Maverick was one of those films you come out of and you just knew when the critics are all on the same page, when virtually everybody is like, this is really a grand slam of a film, then you know you are in something special. And when you have that happen from time to time in screenings. I mean, I go back, one of the screenings I'll never forget was in Boston for The Raid. The Raid is really, truly, The Raid Redemption is one of my favorite. It probably is the best action film of all time, I think, really, if you look at that film. And I remember sitting in that press screening in Boston with a bunch of my buddies. It was lightly attended, probably 25 of us in this gigantic theater. And I've never experienced a film where people are getting out of their seats and shouting, right? It has so much just emotional punch and testosterone just flowing throughout that film. That I never will forget that moment. And I go back to The Raid and it's one of those, that's again, cinematic experience I'll never forget. I would not have had if I watched a screener at home. Wouldn't have been anywhere near the same.